Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's expert webinar titled Routing in React.js. I am Ria from Springpeople. We are India's largest enterprise training providers, and I will be your moderator for today's session. In today's session, we have Pallavi Prasad, an accomplished corporate trainer passionate about bridging the gap between technology and business. With over 500 successful training sessions delivered, she has earned recognition as a trusted expert in her field. Pallavi is laser-focused expertise in C with data structures, OOPS concepts, C++, VC++, multi-threading, core Java, JEE, Spring Hibernate, Unix, Linux shell scripting, .NET Framework 3.5, C, VB.NET, ASP.NET, ADO.NET, JavaScript, PhoneGap, Cordova, RPA, Automation Anywhere, UiPath, AngularJS, to name a few. Pallavi Prasad's commitment to delivering timely and effective training has consistently added value to organizations, ensuring that participants are well equipped to apply their knowledge effectively in real-world settings. Today's webinar, Pallavi Prasad will inform us about understanding the overview of routing, adding routing to your Angular application, and different ways of adding child routes. To all the participants, you can mention your questions in the chat box, and it will be answered at the end of the session. Without further ado, let's start today's session. Now, I would like to invite Mrs. Pallavi Prasad to start the session. Over to you, Pallavi.
Thank you, Ria, and welcome everybody. So today we are going to be having a look at how to work with routing in React.js. This is going to be a simple program, a simple webinar where I'm not going to be going into very much of detail. This is just to understand how routing works and what are its necessities. So what we are going to be covering is these topics today in the webinar that we are going to continue. So let us start by understanding what routing is all about. Then let's have a look at what a React router components are, how to add React router to your code, then how to define routes and how to write nested routes. So let us have a look at how to work with all of these. So let's start with understanding what routing is all about. So whenever you're going to work with routes, or whenever you're writing a single page application or creating a single page web application, you need to be able to show multiple pages based on some kind of a navigation concept, like whether you're going to click on a link maybe, or a button maybe, something which allows you to navigate between the various pages that you have created within your application. In React, this kind of navigation is provided through what we call as a React router. Now, routers are on both sides. You can have client-side routers or server-side routers, but here we are going to be working with client-side routers only. When you look at React, server-side routers, they result in every request being a full page refresh. So basically, when I'm retrieving data from a server somewhere, I'm routing to that particular location from where I'm retrieving the data or where the request is being handled. Then the entire page is refreshed with the new data that I'm going to be bringing in. Now that does work, or that is necessary in certain situations, but not everywhere. So there is usually, if the server is unable to service my request on time, there is usually a delay in the retrieval of data. There are times when it takes forever to load the information onto a page. So you do a regular refresh to make sure that the data is coming in. Now, when you are looking at server-side routing, these are the issues. Not that it is not good, not that it is not necessary. It is in certain situations, but Usually, when we talk about routing, we talk about client-side routing because we are going to be showing different pages to a user. And when we show different pages to the user, we call it as client-side routing, which in case of router in React, we use what is known as a React Router DOM. Now, the React router helps us to navigate between the various components that we have or the various pages that we have within our single page application. And I don't have to refresh my pages every time when I'm trying to load something into my current page. So the demos that I have created are all very basic demos just to understand the concept of routing. They are not doing anything per se. So I have tried to make it as basic as possible so that you can understand how effective routing can be when we are working with React. So when you're working with React, React gives you what is known as a React Router API. Now this React Router API has 3 packages inside it. You have your React Router, you have React Router DOM, and you have React Router Native. Now React Router is part of your React Router DOM. It is the core on which the functionalities of routing are given. So whatever routes that you're going to create, whether you're working with a web application or with a mobile application, the 4 core functionalities that are necessary are part of React Router. React Router Native is exclusively used when we work with native mobile applications, and DOM is used when you're working with web applications. So whenever you want to work with React, you need to be able to install the API into your system. So to install the API, we give npm install and we specify React Router DOM. Now React, as you all know, works on Node. So you need the Node server. So when you're working with the Node server, automatically npm is also packaged along with Node. When you install Node, you're going to install npm automatically. So we want to be able to work with React. So we use npm, or you can use yarn, whichever you're comfortable with. So npm allows you to install the React Router DOM onto your base project or your web application front end that you are creating. So when you are working with your React Router, you need to have an application already created. You can create it by using the create React app application, or you can, whatever other means that you're comfortable with, you can create your React application and keep it ready. So what are the components of your React Router DOM that we are going to be working with? So when you're working with your React Router, there are 3 major components that we work with. The first one is routers. So there are multiple types of routers that are given to us. There are 2 basically, as you can see. One is called as the browser router, and the other one is called the hash router. Now, usually what happens is that a browser router is more than enough when we work with web applications, because nowadays, whatever we use are all up to date. The latest browsers are available, the constant updates on the browsers are available. So a browser router is more than enough when you are working with creating routes for your various pages that you have created. But in certain situations, you may want to be able to work with static pages or static servers, where, like, for example, if you take GitHub, it serves static web pages. So you want to be able to work with such servers or legacy servers, etc. In such cases, we use what is known as a hash router. Now, the next component that we have when we work with React Router DOM are your route matchers. Now, what is a route matcher? Basically, it has to match the URL and render the page based on the URL that you are actually showing. So if I have a URL which shows me the location of a home page, then yes, the home page has to render. If I have a contact page, the contact page has to render, and so on and so forth. So your route matchers basically match the routes that are to be rendered or that are to be matched when my components are being rendered. Then you have your switch. A switch is similar to your switch statement. So in any kind of a programming language, you have a switch statement where based on the URL, you switch to that particular, or based on that particular value, you switch to that particular case. Similarly, here also you have a switch. So based on the URL, you're going to switch to that particular route. Switch is rarely used nowadays. We prefer working with routes. I think in version 5 or version 6 of React DOM, React Router DOM, they have deprecated switch. So normally we work with routes and the routers and routes. So that is what I am going to be using in my demos as well. The third component is for your route changers. So what is this route changer that we have? We have 3 of them: link, nav link, and redirect. When you look at link, it basically tells you which is the element that you have to link to, or which is the element or page that you want to show. One familiarity, or should I say one similarity that I can draw, is when you're working with hyperlinks. So when we work with hyperlinks, basically we use a href which references the page that we want to go to, the HTML page that we want to go to. Your link is similar to that, except that in case of a link, it is going to work like a, what do you call, it's going to work within a single page application, whereas in case of a hyperlink, you do link it to other pages which are going to be a part of your entire whole application. So when you work with a HTML application, we usually break it up into multiple pieces or multiple pages. Here we break it up into multiple components. Nav link and redirect are again 2 other kinds of links that we usually work with. Redirect is used to redirect it to an error page in case of some issues. One example that I'm giving you. So we can use redirect, or you can redirect it to a home page. So the redirect is used when you want to move it back to a particular location from wherever it is currently. Whenever we are going to work with defining routes in case of React, we use one of the classes that we have, for want of a better word, called as a browser router. Now here we are talking only about client-side routing, which means I'm going to be talking about only web applications here, no mobile applications. So when I'm creating a web application, an SPA or a single page web application, I'm going to be defining a route. So to define a route, you have to mention where the definition has to start from. So to provide the starting point of my routes, we use what is known as a browser router. Now this browser router is something that allows me to provide the various routes, or provide a location which recognizes the various routes that I'm going to be building within my application. The second is routes. So routes is also a part of the router DOM. Routes is more like a container which is going to have all the list of various routes that we are creating. Route defines each particular route that we want to define, where a particular element or a particular component is loaded based on the path or the URL that we have defined. So this is the basic idea of how a route or how routes are created. Now you can have n number of routes within your application depending on the number of pages that you have. Sometimes what we need to do is we cannot use a single route for everything. So what we do is we use what are called as nested routes. When you talk about a route, you are specifically talking about only one URL. Now let us say that I have a page. Let's take a simple application like Amazon. And in Amazon, if I am going to be showing all the products, I mean, I'm going to be showing so many hundreds of products basically. Now I want to go to a particular category of products. So what we can do is we can select a particular category. Let us say I'm looking at shoes. So when I click on shoes, it should show me a list of shoes, both male and female and children's shoes. So now I can choose between those 3 categories that have been coming up. I am still within the shoes page only. Only thing is now I'm going to be loading something specific to a particular kind or a particular gender of shoes. So there what we do in such cases is we want to move within a particular page. So we use what are known as nested routes. So a nested route is a route that is going to be placed inside another route. So you have a parent route inside which you're going to have your nested routes. Now this is a small example that I have put up here. Here if you notice, the path root, the second one is for about. So I'm going to be loading an component called as about. Inside about, I have two more roots that I'm going to be working with. That is one for team and one for element. Now all of this is okay. Great. But how am I going to call these roots? So to call these roots, we use a link. So the link is going to help us to map to these particular roots. And when we map to the root, accordingly, whatever matches the root, that particular component is going to be loaded for us. Let's have a look at how these various things work. So I do have a simple demonstration here. So I have created a set of pages. As you can see, there are about 5 pages that I have created. Now the same example or a screenshot that I had put onto the slide, I've taken it from here. So this is the data that I am working with. So I have 5 pages, as you can see, very simple pages. I have one for home, one for team, one for contact, company, and about. The data that I'm putting into these is pretty simple. As you can see, very easy and simple to work with. Now, if you go to your app.js, what happens is that I want to be able to provide routes. So what I'm doing is I'm going to be importing the browser router as a router and using that for my navigation purposes. Now within the router, you can see for yourself, I have created links. Now these links are going to be the navigation links that I'm going to be working with. So I have set up a styling and everything, but that is different. So I'm going to be using these links to navigate between the various components that are there within my application. Now the routes that are going to be mapped by these links and going to open the specific pages or components for me are mentioned within this particular category of routes. So if you can see here, I have mapped the routes very specifically. So in about, so I gave about/team, it is going to go to team/company, it goes to the company page. Now about is going to work like a container inside which we are going to be working with these two very specific pages for team and for company. Now, whenever you're going to work with this kind of a work, you need to be able to add links into another location or into the parent page from which you're going to have the nested routes. So if you go into about.js, I have two nested routes here. One is for the team, the other is for the company. Now the problem here is just by adding the links, it's not going to be enough. I have to mention that this is taking the information from elsewhere and it is going to be printing it inside, or should I say it's going to be rendering it inside this about page. To ensure that some other child pages are rendering inside this about page, we use outlet. Outlet is the location where whatever I click on, that particular component associated with the root is going to be loaded and displayed for me. Now let me quickly execute this and show it to you. So I already have the content ready. Let me start it off and let me demonstrate it. It's going to take a couple of minutes to start off. So once it starts there, this is my page. So you can see here for yourself, I have 3 pages that I'm working with: home, about, and contact. Now I can also show you the URLs. So if I give about, this opens the about page. You can see the URL that I am putting it here. Now if I were to say /team, it will show me the team page. Now instead of me typing in the URL, we have a link that we are making use of. Now the link maps to these particular pages that I am working with. So I click on something, I select something, it will automatically change the URL. It will also change the page that is rendering the content for me. Now this is home again. So I can click on the button as well so that it will link it to another page for me. So I can render the content as per my specifications. Now here, the routes that I'm using, the content that I'm using is very simple. Now, if I were to be working with REST APIs, then yes, that whatever I would create would reflect the content that I'm going to be retrieving from a REST API, whether it is a fake API for demo purposes or whether it's an actual API that is connecting to a database somewhere and retrieving the data for me, or a server somewhere and retrieving the data for me. All of that would be rendered here onto my pages. Now, if I'm going to be working with REST APIs, it's up to you. You can work with Axios, which is one of the easiest mechanisms that is available for us in React to be able to retrieve the content and print it. So Axios is something that I would recommend for anybody who is going to be working with REST APIs and connecting to a database somewhere. So you can write the code for that and get it to render the content for you on your pages as well. So this is a very simple demonstration of how to work with React and your React routing. Basically, it is a small topic and it is a very interesting topic which can be built on further. As I said, this is more of an overview of routing that we have in React. There is more that you can get into when you're working with React, or rather when you're working with routing, because it is not limited to having 3 or 4 pages or having 3 or 4 nested routes. It is much more comprehensive or much bigger than what I have just now covered for all of you. So routing or routes in case of React are something that helps you to navigate throughout your entire web application, ensuring that there is seamless rendering of the various components that you have within your application, or should I say the various pages that you have within your within your web application without any complications. Now, there are a few things that you have to keep in mind. You have to have your React router DOM, preferably the latest version or the latest -1 version available to you within your application. I have installed this particular React router DOM. So if you want to check to see if it's actually been successfully installed, you just need to go to package.json. You should be able to find the version of React router DOM here. Currently, in my case, it is using 6.25.1, which is the latest version of React router DOM that is available. Now, do make sure that you get the latest or the latest -1 versions that are available to you when you work with React and React routers, so that you have the leverage to work with all the latest changes that have been made and made available to you in React. Okay, so now I would like to open the board for any questions that you might have. Okay, so anybody has any questions? Because this concludes the entire routing in React, or should I say the overview of entire routing in React. Anybody has any questions? Okay. So over to you, Ria.
Okay, thank you, Pallavi, for your invaluable insights on technology. I'm sure it was certainly a very informative session for all of you. If you guys are interested in learning more about various routing in React.js, do check out our super discounted batches of virtual instructor LED trainings on our website, springpeople.com. These VILT trainings are leveraged online from the comforts of your home and flexible as per your schedule and location. If you do not find any suitable batches, we'd be happy to discuss and schedule private batches for you. If you don't have time to join live online, then do try out our affordable self-paced courses. For more information, do write to us at training@springpeople.com or call on our number displayed on the current slide. Now, we will open the forum to answer questions that we have received during the session. So let's get our questions answered. Over to you, Pallavi.
Thanks, Ria. So somebody has asked a question. about can we get the presentation PPT after the session? I think Ria, either you or Kaushik are going to be the best people to answer this particular question, whether we can share the presentation PPTs as well. I am unaware of whether we can share it or not.
We will be sharing the video link and we will also be uploading on YouTube channel, Springpeople YouTube channel.
Okay. Right. So any other questions, please?
All right, thank you everyone. We appreciate you being here. We shall be sending out the webinar recording to all you participants soon. I request you to kindly provide feedback before signing off. It will help us improve the quality of our future events. Thanks again for joining us today. Signing off on behalf of Team Springpeople. Hope to see you again for our next expert webinar. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.